What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another pound for pound ATL. Obviously, we're not live tonight. Today, as you're seeing this, me and Jonathan spent 10 plus hours streaming last week on the draft, so we figured we'd take a little bit of a break. But with that being said, I didn't necessarily want to leave y'all hanging, and without some form of content or without just chatting with y'all and getting y'all's reactions on things that have been coming out and the things that have been transpiring. One of the major things that I've been seeing transpiring, boy, is a lot of people up in their feelings and a lot of folks like ranting and raving, I guess you could say. So I figured, hey man, if that's what we're doing, might as well join the party, right? I might as well join the rant fest and add to the discourse that has been the 2023 NFL draft for the Atlanta Falcons. Um, First, I'm going to start off with like the local rants, the local peoples. And what I mean by that is the folks that proclaim themselves to be Falcons fans and like Bulldog fans. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that you aren't a fan or how you should be a fan. That's not what I'm trying to do here. But what I am trying to say is that when I go to work, I'm surrounded by a lot of Georgia Bulldog fans who, for the most part, do not care much about the pro football game at all. They feel like once they get to the pros, they have lost their, moxie, have lost their joy and love for the game, and so therefore they just, they stick to watching pro football. Now, I'm often curious of how the new NIL deals reconcile with that thought process, but that's another day and that's another time. Um, what I want to talk about right now, though, is how they feel like if the Falcons aren't drafting Bulldog players, then they're not serious about winning and they're not good and they're not trying to win games. Why can't they be like the Philadelphia Eagles and they're going to go be the Eagles fans? You know what, bro? That's what you want to do. You want to go be an Eagles fan? By all means. I'm not going to stop you, and I'm sure enough not going to stand in your way. As a matter of fact, I think floating around on the internet are applications that you could fill out to join the bandwagon fandom that is the Philadelphia Eagles. Me, myself, I'm going to stick with the Atlanta Falcons because, like y'all chose to be fans of the Georgia Bulldogs, good, bad, indifferent, all those years without winning a title, only having one title, being made fun of like the little stepsister of the Alabama Crimson Tide, all this other good stuff. You stuck with your team. That's what fans do. And I'm good. I'm glad y'all have. I'm glad you did. I'm glad y'all stuck with them because now you get to stand here and pound your chest because you got two back-to-back titles, and you got all these really good players. But you want to sit here and try to tell me that your team's the only way that you're going to win in the National Football League? No, dog. No, that's not how this works. Like I encourage you to go check the snap counts of Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean from last year up there in your vaunted Philadelphia Eagles. They didn't play a huge part in it. And that's okay. They were rookies. It's no big deal. That's how the game is played. That's how the pros are done, my friend. Okay? The pros are a completely different animal than college. Guys who were absolutely killing in college may not even make much of a difference at all in the pro level. Time will tell. For your sake, I guess we'll look back in 5 years, 10 years, and if Jalen Carter, who I'm talking about mainly, is killing it in the league, then you'll get to rub it in all of our faces. But what I know for sure, even your own head coach alluded to the fact that Jalen Carter has some work ethic issues. That maybe if he was in shape, he would have been getting some more snaps for the Georgia Bulldogs. I didn't say that. Your coach said that. Okay. So all that does is back up the rumors that we heard that he wasn't necessarily the most coachable guy, that he wasn't necessarily uh, fully committed and fully like involved in football. We said that on our streams. But for some of y'all, all that matters is the G on the side of the helmet. I've heard it all the time. I hear it a lot. Oh well, I'm gonna be a fan of that guy no matter what team he goes to. Okay, then that's what you are. You are a college fan. Then if you are a college fan, then maybe keep your opinion about the pro team to yourself. Maybe don't spew it out on Twitter or what have you. I don't know. Because I tell you this, I am a fan of the pro team. I keep my opinions about the college team to a bare minimum. I definitely I definitely don't think that my fandom for the Falcons gives me any right to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. And I would hope that you don't think that your fandom for the Georgia Bulldogs gives you much of a reason to talk about the Falcons unless you really follow the Falcons and follow what they're doing. Like, we were all of us were certain that at pick number 5, that Jalen Carter was not going to slide past Seattle Seahawks. They absolutely love having a dominant defensive line. Guess what? He slid past the Seahawks. He slid past Detroit. I think somebody traded up into Detroit's spot. Either way, he slid past the Raiders. They took Tyree Wilson, who we were all sure was going to go up in the top 3. So, I get it, folks. You like your players. You think your players are the best. I know y'all are all going to tell me I'm an idiot in the comments down below. I get it. I understand. By all means, tell me I'm an idiot. But I will say this, for all the ones that thinks I'm an idiot, I spend a lot of time like devouring and watching film, watching tape, watching what our, coaching staff, what their tendencies were, where they came from, what they might do. And it did not surprise me one bit, given the moves that they had made up to this point, that they took Bijan at 8 and not Carter. At this point, you had brought in David Onyemata. You still have Grady Jarrett. Where are you going to play Carter? Right? You're going to spend the number 8 overall pick, a premium pick, for a guy who's going to be splitting major reps all across the defensive line. Some people build their staffs and their rosters differently. Staffs, that's what I meant. They build their rosters differently. Up there in Washington, they don't care much about cornerbacks. And Ron Rivera doesn't care a ton about cornerbacks. He likes his D-line. That's how he likes to build it. For a long time, Seattle was about the linebackers, free safety play, that kind of thing. Everybody chooses to do it a little bit differently. I'm not saying Carter wouldn't have worked out here, but for those who say that they're a fan of, Jalen Carter, or a fan of the Bulldogs over everything else, you should be happy where he landed. He landed with Nakobe Dean. He landed with Jordan Davis. He landed with Nolan Smith. He landed with Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Keely Ringo. These players are, like, the vast majority of those players outside of Brandon Cox or Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, those guys are stalwart veterans that will help mold him along. And then he's back in there with guys who are used to how he plays, how he acts, and everything else. That's the best situation for him to land. Comes to mind another player that was here that ended up going somewhere else via trade and being successful. Brett Favre is what I'm talking about. Here in Atlanta, he was a bust. He was an abject failure. He couldn't stop partying, all this other stuff. Shipped him out to Green Bay. He becomes a success. It's not always great to stay home, so to speak, or stay where you were drafted in that particular case. What I'm getting at is, quit scouting the helmet. Just because the helmet has a G on it does not precede everything else. Does not precede culture. It does not precede scheme fit. It does not precede staffing fit, like coaching fit. It doesn't precede any of that stuff. Straight up and down. Just because there's a G on the side of the helmet, it doesn't mean that gets to, like, override everything else. Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith are trying to build something here. They're trying to build and establish the culture that they want. If Jalen Carter is used to, like, basically just being the most dominant person there, and you get to the league and you're no longer the most dominant person, maybe they're not wanting to give him this special kind of treatment. Who knows? I don't. You don't. We don't have access to that information. The vast majority, all you have access is to the fact that the guy wears a G on the side of his helmet. So just keep that in mind. Moving right along to my this curtails with this topic. I've seen a lot of articles written today. I'm talking about how Atlanta didn't feel their biggest need. Talking about their biggest need being a pass rusher. That they picked a luxury pick at Bijan Robinson at 8, which we're going to get into here in a minute. But that they didn't pick, like they didn't fill their biggest need in the first round. So therefore it's a failure. This team ain't drafted need. I already told y'all that. They've told y'all that. They have proved that over and over again. These past 2 years, they're not drafting for need. They're drafting for BPA. That BPA this year was not a blue chip pass rusher. There wasn't one there. Now, maybe had they traded down, and before you say, well, they could have traded down, you don't know that. You don't know what offers they were getting. You don't know if there's people there that wanted to come up to get somebody. You don't know that because nobody was beating the door down to come up to 8 for Jalen Carter at the moment. All Philly had to do was go up to 9. Got a slight feeling maybe they didn't have to do that. Who knows? So there was nobody that wanted to jump up to 8 for anything. So the Falcons stayed pat and took the best player available. Arguably the best player in the draft, talent-wise. They didn't reach for Lucas Van Ness. They didn't reach for Miles Murphy. They didn't reach for Nolan Smith at 8. They stood by their board, which if any of y'all saw the Twitter that I pinned from Mitchell Schwartz, he was talking about how we really need to stop with this whole, just because this board doesn't line up with the way the media board, everybody's board is different. Terry even talked about they didn't necessarily have a board. They had clusters of players that they felt okay taking at 8 and okay taking at 44. There were clusters of players. It wasn't necessarily a board. So to act like y'all know more than the Falcons know, and you're going to say, oh, JR, don't you act like you know? No, I try not to. And if I'm coming across acting like I know more than the Falcons know, I hope one of y'all check me because that has never been my intent. My intent is to try to give you my best guess of what I think the Falcons might do based on the information that I can garner, which, hey, guess what? Y'all have access to the same stuff that I do. Okay? So keep that in mind. Just all you got to do is look around on the internet, follow some people, hear what they're having to say. And leading up to the draft, it should have been no surprise at all that the Falcons were going to take Bijan Robinson. The vast majority of the talking heads were said that the Falcons were going to take Bijan because it made the most sense. They are a BPA team. He is arguably the best player in the draft. But to act like they didn't take their biggest need because they didn't take a pass rusher is totally ignoring what they did in the offseason. It's totally ignoring the fact that they brought in Calais Campbell, the fact that they brought in David Onyemata, the fact that they brought in Bud Dupree, the fact that they signed Caden Ellis, the fact that they re-signed Lorenzo Carter, the fact that they spent a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick last year on pass rushers. Those guys take time to develop. There was nobody in this draft that was going to come in day one and give you 10 sacks. I will eat crow if Will Anderson or Tyree Wilson, who you didn't have an opportunity to draft, get 10 sacks this year. But Bud Dupree has gotten 11 sacks. Calais Campbell's a consistent, 5 to 10 sack guy. David Onyemata had 7 sacks. So did Caden Ellis. The floor is being raised. Does any of this guarantee success? No, obviously does not. But the floor is being raised, and that's what you've asked for. That's what all of us have asked for. These past 2 years, this team has won 7 games 2 years in a row with a depleted roster, trading away franchise players, getting out of one of the bigger cap hells that any team has ever really been in historically. And they got out under it in 2 years. Now we're seeing the fruits of that. Jesse Bates, David Onyemata, freaking Caden Ellis, Calais Campbell, Bud Dupree. These are all on the defensive side of the ball. So it's hard for me to sit here and try to say, oh, they didn't address their biggest need. That's a bunch of crap to me. They did. And then, oh, you're going to sit here and tell me, okay, so fine. They take a running back at 8. What was the point of that? All right, I got some interesting numbers for you that might, I don't know if this will change your mind. I don't know. At this point, it won't change your mind until Bijan Robinson starts, toting the rock and scoring touchdowns. But nevertheless, 2020, the year that Arthur Smith arguably had his best year as a play caller. Let me give you this. Derrick Henry rushed for 2,027 yards, joined a vaunted club of over 2,000 yards rushing, had 31 targets for 19 receptions, 114 yards. 31 targets, 19 receptions. Why is that a big deal? The very next year, first year here in Atlanta, a far worse roster than what he was dealing with in Tennessee. The combined efforts of Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson, guys that he got to handpick, whether it worked out or not, guys that he got to handpick, 121 targets, 96 receptions, 807 yards, 6 touchdowns. That's all through the air. Oh, but he don't want to pass. That sounds like a lot of passing. Oh, he don't want to spread the ball around. That's what that sounds like to me. You had 807 yards of receptions on top of 1,121 yards rushing. That's almost 2,000 yards again coming out of your backfield. Why does that make a big deal? 2022, massive drop from Cordell Patterson's production in 21. But I think, he was hurt. He was worn out a little bit. But you still had 64 targets to the running back position. That's double what he had to Derrick Henry. He wants to throw to the backs. It's plain and simple. Whether y'all want to look at it or not. We get worried about wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, who's this, who's that. He wants to throw the ball. I have proof here, right here. I drew up all the plays from the last game of the Bucs. I've brought this up a handful of times just because it's going to prove a further point down the road. He throws out of heavy sets. Yes, it looks different than other teams. Different is not always bad. If you do the same thing as everybody else, defenses have a chance to stop you. This is the counterpunch. Will it work? Time will tell. But this is the counterpunch to defenses defending spread option offenses. You spread off, the defenses out. They had to get lighter. Arthur Smith says, fine, you're going to get lighter. I'm going to condense the formation, make it look like a run, make you declare how you're going to defend it, and then attack you, whether it's a pass or whether it's a run. Having a talent like Bijan Robinson does nothing but help that. He wasn't used exclusively as a passer, but everybody has said that he possesses the skill set to be a really good slot receiver, if that's what he chose to be. I've watched a handful of his games since he's been drafted, few of them before then, but what he can do with a wheel route coming out of the backfield is awesome. His body control and catching back shoulder fades is something that running back shouldn't possess. Does that get utilized? Time will tell. Does this guarantee success? No, nothing guarantees success. One of the things that does guarantee success, at least it feels like it does, is having a freak show alien at quarterback. We don't have that. So let's build up everything else. Oh, can you win the Super Bowl with a subpar quarterback? Yeah, it's been done before. Peyton Manning won it with a noodle of an arm. Nobody's going to sit here and claim that Eli Manning was the greatest quarterback that ever stepped a foot on the field, and he's got 2. So can it be done? Yes, it can be done. There's a lot of different ways to build a team. And I would hope and pray that y'all would at least let it play out before we start really heavily criticizing. Oh, Arthur Smith's not creative. I beg to differ. There's a lot of brilliant football minds that are out there in the universe that actually disagree, that say he is a very creative play caller. It just doesn't look like what you think it should look like. So therefore you criticize it. I would implore you to do a little bit of research and stop helmet scouting. These are the two things I implore you to do. I try not to do these kind of rants often because I want it to be fun and lighthearted, and I'm not trying to be shock jock kind of person. I don't want to come across like I'm talking down to somebody, and I hope y'all don't take it that way. There's far many ways to build the team and build a roster. There's not just one blueprint. If that was the case, then we would have quit taking quarterbacks in the first round years ago. When Tom Brady won his 6th ring, and in this past year, Brock Purdy almost takes a team to the Super Bowl. So don't sit here and think that there's one way to build a roster. And don't sit here and think that just because your team didn't draft players from a certain school that they're not trying to win. That's ridiculous. If you're going to be a fan of a team, be a fan of that team. And just be honest with yourself. Say that you're a college, like I enjoy college more than pros. Hope my guys who played at my school go on to do great things. Don't criticize a team for not drafting your guys. That just makes you sound silly to me. I appreciate it, folks. Glad y'all stuck around. Follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. Follow Jonathan on Twitter. He's at Jonathan M. Holder. We'll be back live next Tuesday with obviously our normal live stream. Kind of like I said, giving us a little bit of a break. And yeah, just keep your eye on our channel. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.